Okay, this is Mike Benoit, and I'm doing a critique of the debate between Sam Seder and Matt Digeronimo. And this was it's supposedly a libertarian against I guess I don't know what you call Sam. I might call Sam a socialist. And for this interview, I'll call him a socialist, and he's welcome to call me up for a debate and prove to me he's not a socialist. So, but I think he's for the forced redistribution of personal property, personal wealth. And then Libertarian Mark, well, I think he's the nice guy and has got a basic grasp on libertarianism. There's many things he did and said that I'm not too too hot on. So let's get into the meat of this stuff. I'm going to get rid of the screen share right now. There you go. That should be gone, hopefully. And we'll take a breakdown of what was said here. Now, mostly when they went on to describe their opening, there's something I saw about Matt that really got me off on the wrong foot. And you know, anarchists get me off on the wrong foot when they're talking about libertarianism. And so it's just like there's sort of a bizarre concept, and now I know why a lot of my friends are saying, you know, Libertarian Party needs to come up with a new name, and because this branding is really far-fetched out there. It's like some folks, like Matt was talking about, that libertarian is just a classroom philosophy, and it could never exist in the real world. And so I don't know if he's referring to anarchy or anarchism or what. But I kind of had to label him a pseudo-libertarian because he can't defend libertarianism right. And then Sam Seder, well, of course, he was a little bit all over the field here. And let's take up the item that they were really talking about mostly in here, and was Social Security. And so, and Mark for a little bit was saying the right things regarding Social Security. And some of those right things are that there's a contract that people went into, a social contract, if you will, through the United States government. And so many of those people are now dependent. So you can't just dump the system. But he goes in, he was asked the question, what would be his personal preference, and then he turns around and says, dump the system, just end the system. And so he's not communicating his ideas right or properly. Maybe he believes the same as I do, and that is those folks that are dependent on Social Security certainly we must see those people through, because you know, all their working life they had the Social Security taxes, that money withheld from their paycheck, and now they're in a condition where they're dependent on government. But neither of the gentlemen really addressed the issue of whether or not people should be forced into such a program. And of course, it's implied with Sam Seder. But the whole idea is you go to work and you exchange your labor for dollars with somebody, that all of a sudden that it's mandated by the government that you give up a certain portion of that for Social Security. You have no choice on it. Of course, Sam Seder's argument would be, yeah, but most people, or so many people, lots of people, will not put away for their old age, and therefore this is right that we require everybody to participate and pay into this. And of course, not everybody does. There's all those folks that don't have to for one reason or another. So, but that'd be Sam Seder's justification, is that you know, it's like it's a social contract that you have to be part of, because the majority said that we're going to have such a thing. If you want to look at that and how many different ways it's rotten first in the concept of who owns your labor. And of course, the government now thinks it owns your labor. You know, once upon a time, individuals thought they had the right to own other individuals. And so the government had something to do with ending that institution after decades of having something to do with supporting that institution of slavery that I'm talking about. but it was replaced with a national government slavery system. You know, Social Security started back in the day. It started based on a 100% voluntary contribution concept. 30 million people volunteered the first year. I think it was in 33. And of course, they all thought it was a great thing that their employer was forced to match the contribution. And again, the violation of some people's rights. So they volunteered. And of course, what happens when you give up liberty for security? You end up with nothing. And we come down to the point that Sam is justifying the existence of the Social Security program by saying something like 50% of our seniors get near all their retirement from Social Security. So this is a good program because what, Sam? Because we've got half of our senior population dependent on the government for their survival. That's a good thing. And then, you know, he mentions 2/3 get 50% of their retirement from Social Security. And he also uses the term 2/3 of our elderly were living in poverty when Social Security started. You know, it's really how amazing people can use facts to suit their own purposes. Now, if you look at the causes of the Depression, which would be another half-hour video, and when did Social Security start? Well, smack dab in the middle of the Depression. Now, if we looked at the causes of the Depression, then you can find out why these seniors were living in poverty. Not just seniors were living in poverty, but the whole country was living in poverty. So the significance of his 2/3 figure there anyway. And now we get to the point, and of course, in this video, Mark calls the Social Security system a Ponzi scheme. And, you know, Sam didn't like something about that. He said that a Ponzi scheme was something where there's a point where there's no money. Well, that's not true. A Ponzi scheme is not a point where there's no money. Ponzi scheme is at a point where there's not enough money to pay out the obligations. And so then he goes to, Sam starts to speak to an issue of that without the Social Security, these people, the elderly, who, if they didn't have the Social Security, they would be dependent on their kids. You know, which is an amazing concept, because just because this government comes from their, this check comes from the government for this Social Security payment, does Sam not realize that that money is being taken from their kids' paychecks? So these seniors and elderly are still dependent on their kids for their existence. The only difference is there's a separation in the family. The parents might live in one city 2,000 miles away and the kids in another place. The money is forced out of their check by the government, and then that money is taken to Washington, D.C. and redistributed to the senior parents. Now, the scheme of this thing is that the seniors don't think they're on welfare. They think that this is their money coming back to them, and that's an absolute lie. From the beginning, it was a redistribution of production. The money from the first batch going in ended up having to pay, or just ended up paying to current seniors. We got a sneeze on this video, but we're going to live with it. All right, so that's how your Social Security program is working, and the families are separated. You know, yeah, back in the old days, it's unfortunate, maybe unfortunate you say, but a lot of times the adult children had to live with their parents, not for the benefit of the adult children so much, it was for the benefit of the parents, because the parents, you know, didn't put enough away for retirement or didn't have enough and whatnot, so the families would be together like that. I know terrible things like there was always someone there, some adult, a grandma, grandpa, or mom, there with the kids. But now we got this other scheme where grandpa and grandma are somewhere else. They're living in retirement with the Social Security check that's being forced out of the kids. And Most of the time, grandma and grandpa can't even see the kids, and mom and dad have to put the kids out to babysitters and daycares and all of that to make it work. But, old Sam Seder here is going to be extolling the virtues of this wonderful socialist program, Social Security. Now, having said all of that, the seniors that have been duped out of their money for all their working lifetime under the guise that it was going into a retirement fund for them. They're actually, it is a welfare program, and like that movie, A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, the truth is what it is. And so, if you found this out as a senior, nobody's saying don't take that check, but you ought to be awful angry about that the government has confiscated your production so that they could put you on the dole when you were old and couldn't work anymore. And guys like Sam Seder think that this is just fine. He thinks it's fine that we can lock up people and put them in prison if they don't comply to this program. If they don't send their money into the Social Security Redistribution Administration, then they should be punished with prison. Because after all these laws are backed up with that. And Sam thinks it's a good thing that the government can somehow do such a thing and be within its lawful rights to do such a thing. Well, why did they start it off as a voluntary program to begin with? And why did they induce and coerce, not coerce, more like induce or seduce people into doing it by saying your employer had to match what you put in? And now let's look at the mechanics of where it's ending up and the concept of it being a Ponzi scheme. In the debate, I think Matt did make a good point in regards to if you get a Social Security raise of 3% and inflation goes up 8%, you actually lost 5% of your buying power. Now, and that's what's going to happen with this Social Security Ponzi scheme, because a little basic math will tell you the explosion of debt at the federal level, and that the Social Security is coming to the point where there's more people drawing out than putting in. The amount of money that they're confiscating out of paychecks right now is not enough to cover the money that they're redistributing to the senior class. So it's already at the point of Ponzi schemes almost game up. And we know that for this system to continue, they're printing paper or fiat dollars to make it work, and the consequences of that is the destruction, because that's what the 8% that Matt was referring to as the increase. That 8% inflation is really probably a low number, but that's the destruction and the value of the Social Security check. Now we're going to look at, come down the pike here a little bit more, and senior citizens are going to be able to take that Social Security check and not be able to make their rent payments and buy their food and clothing and pay their utility bills with it. It won't be enough to cover it. And so this government saving seniors from poverty are going to have us all ending up in poverty. But it's not the outcome that I want to argue. It's the freedom of the issue. Now, government does have a role, and when government provides a benefit that's universal, and that benefit should basically have as its root intention is the securing of the right to life, liberty, and property, and it doesn't do that by violating one person's right to life, liberty, and property and to supply it to another. It does it by a universal system that provides for the general welfare, which means that everybody will pay a cost towards the benefit, if you will. For example, if the Hoover Dam or the Boulder Dam, or whichever the name you prefer, was built, say, with taxpayer dollars, then that repayment cost would go back to the taxpayers in the use scenario. In other words, if they took it from you to build the dam, when the dam produces electricity, the cost to pay The taxpayer back should come from the cost or the profit of the utility. And then once the utility is up and running and people pay for their electricity, then they're paying the actual cost of the electricity, which funds the project, and the project benefited everybody equally. Any kind of function that the government is undertaking, that's the way it should be doing it, like national defense or the judicial system. So anyway, I'm looking forward to Sam Seder getting a hold of me so I can debate him on all these issues, and once and for all we can get this nailed down to an understanding is that no, anarchy will never exist. It's just something that's unnatural. It's like saying the sun or moon will never exist. So the question is not whether or not government will exist. The question is, what is the proper role of government? And it's as spoken in the Declaration of Independence, it's supposed to secure our inalienable rights, not violate them. And that's how every program that the government operates with should be analyzed. And then you'll find out that probably about 80% of the federal government is outside those constraints. And then the 20% that's within those constraints is probably 50% as efficient as it should be or could be. And so if we want to have the pursuit of happiness, liberty, and the right to own our property restored to us, we just simply have to get back to the roots and the understanding of that linchpin to prosperity and affluence. And that linchpin is, and we have these rights, and governments are supposed to secure them, not violate them. Thank you. That's it for today.